Hey guys, welcome back. Robocraft Early Access coverage. This is episode 62. I'm Enigmius, and today, continuing with the Panther bee. What a terrifying name. I just picture a panther and a bee mixed into one. There's no happy outcome there, which is good because it should hopefully strike fear in the hearts of our enemies and maybe some of our derpier teammates, get them to pay attention a little bit better. A couple of things that I wanted to do at the beginning of this section of the build. One, finish the spine, because the way we've been doing it up to this point may have bred a little bit of confusion in terms of how this build is going to be different from one where we put the spine in as the very first thing and then connect everything to it. And the answer is not really any different. I just decided with this build that I was going to start at the front and work my way back. But it's not difficult at this point to finish putting in the rest of the spine, especially now that we've got the front end in place, because that was going to be a little bit tricky if we weren't careful. The other thing I wanted to do is recess the pilot seat farther down into the bot so that we'll be able to build over it a little bit easier without obstructing the rear gun. That's one of the things that I was kind of looking at as I was, doing an overview of the bot without recording, and realized that the pilot seat, the way it was sitting up high, if we were going to try and build around it, it was going to stick right up into the line of fire of the rear gun. So we'll move that, but just so that we don't cause any confusion, it's a temporary placement that you'll see us doing momentarily here. And the whole idea is that we don't want the pilot seat to disappear if a plasma blast knocks off two blocks, and it just happens to be the two between the outside of the bot and the pilot seat. And it's very, very easy to find ourselves in a position where that happens. You can see here, it's basically mounted directly to the spine. The blocks directly under it are sitting on top of a pair of blocks, and underneath those blocks is open air. And even if you look at it from the sides, the blocks that those prisms are connected to on either side are the only blocks between the pilot seat and open air. So no matter how you slice it, this is a very weak mount for the pilot seat, and that's okay, because it's just a temporary placement to get it out of the way so that we can build some things around it, and then we can revisit it later knowing that it's definitely one of the things we have to take care of before we push forward with the rest of the bot. We've got to get the gun mounts in first, and this is actually one of the few truly asymmetrical parts of this build is the left and the right gun mount. The rear gun is a little bit off center, but realistically speaking, it's the left and right gun mounts that are asymmetrical, and not by much. It's only by a couple of blocks in any given direction that these guys are off, and it's all just to support a slightly narrower chassis, make us a little bit harder to hit when we're peeking over a ledge shooting down at someone, and also cutting down on the number of blocks that we need for the builds all over, because this thing is just turning into a beefy bastard. I've come to the realization that we're going to have to spend a little bit of time grinding hard to get our levels up if we want to finish this bot the way that I want to finish it. I don't think we need to get all the way up to level 100. I think we're level 81 or 82 now, but we definitely need more than what we've got. There are the two thrusters in the back of the bot that are basically rear thrusters that allow us to slow down when we're moving forward. We can get rid of one, possibly both if we really had to. If it's a choice between better performance when slowing down and not having enough CPU to build the chassis, we got to get the chassis done before we can get into a match, and it's better, it's going to earn us more RP and experience as a bot that doesn't perform quite as well as we hoped it would than it would as a bot that never leaves the garage. So we'll make that decision when the time comes. In the meantime, I'm going to spend at least a day or two pushing hard to see just how many levels we can increase and see how that impacts the rest of the build before we start talking about stripping anything out of it at this point in order to free up CPU. Now you can see the gun mount itself. This is pretty common when you see me doing gun mounts, is the mount connects to the spine, to the chassis. It's not super wide, but it's not a block wide. It's, eventually gets built out to at least 2 blocks wide. And it doesn't connect at all to the blocks that are immediately around the gun mount, so that you've got this armor section around the gun that can absorb damage without transferring it to the gun at all. And then you've got the actual gun mount itself that goes down into the chassis and connects to hopefully hopefully keep the gun on the bot a little bit longer than it would if it was just kind of sitting on top of something, or, you know, sitting on an eye stalk, as I call them. You've seen them, the bots that just have single columns of cubes and then guns mounted on top of them. And the closer to the back of the bot you get, the taller the columns of cubes. Not my style, really. I just can't. Even if I think of building it, I just shake my head. I can't do it. So these are the thrusters I was talking about, usually just off to the right, pointing backwards to help us slow down, get ourselves out of a jam if we nose first into something. The hovers alone are pretty good for helping us with that, so we don't necessarily have to worry about it. It's just the one thing that I've been noticing with Pretty Hate Machine is with the hovers, that forward momentum is a potential disaster waiting to happen. Now, I'm also kind of giving a little bit of thought to protecting the hover blades from underneath. But again, that's one of the things. We've got it protected from the sides, the above and the below protection, kind of secondary to the main chassis. So again, if we go into a match and we lose hover blades because they're not protected as well as they could be, we're still going to come out farther ahead than if we didn't go into the match at all. Realistically speaking, though, I would just take Pretty Hate Machine if this one wasn't ready, because that's what we do. So that one mount on the other side is kind of done-ish. I would never really call anything 100% done, but it's complete to the extent that we can kind of go over here and start looking at what we can do to get this guy mounted and connected to the chassis. It's just a very step-by-step kind of process. We're not thinking about the whole bot. We're thinking about individual components and what we're doing to protect them. The front end of the bot was protecting the front 3 thrusters and also presenting a fairly beefy section of the bot that the enemy has to shoot through to really hurt us. And then we started looking at building around the legs, building around the front gun, building around the front hover blades. Now we're onto the gun mounts in the middle, and then we'll do the middle hover blades. And then as we go backwards, we'll get to the pilot seat, the rear hover blades, the rear gun, and the rear legs. If you look at it that way, there's a number of different things that we still have to do, but no one task is overwhelming. It's just a gun mount, or it's just armoring around a leg or something like that. Cuts down on the intimidation factor so that it's easier as a builder to focus on what you're doing, because when I'm building this gun mount here, what I plan on doing with the gun mount on the back or with the rear legs or the rear thrusters, none of that matters, because I'm not building those right now. I'm just building what's in front of me. Take it up in small chunks, bite-sized pieces, and it's amazing how things kind of come together on their own. And then you learn to refine. You built it to a certain point, and then you look at it and say, hey, you know what? I just realized that would work better that way. You change it, and along the way you learn a few things about how you like to do things, and then the next time you build the bot, it's better. It's a process, and there's still people who kind of present themselves like, I'm terrible at this, I can never do this. If I don't have someone else showing me exactly what to do, my bots always suck. If they would just give themselves an opportunity to make some mistakes and try things intelligently, methodically, with an eye to the basics, it's really not that bad. It's not that hard. None of my bots, I think, win prizes for aesthetic appeal at this point. Has to be said. Right now we're focusing on asymmetry. It's something that's things don't line up from, they're not mirror images down the center axis of the bot. Things are a little bit off on one side compared to what they are on the other, or a lot off on one side compared to the other. It depends on how you look at it. And it's just a build philosophy and seeing how the game responds to that when we don't build things perfectly balanced from one side to the next. Is it a big deal? Does it have a major impact on the performance of the bot when things don't line up properly? Or is it pretty forgiving? These are things that we learn by doing. So far, what I'm seeing is that, for the most part, unless you go really, really crazy with the asymmetry, it's pretty forgiving. It's not really too crazy. Even when we had the Spider Bee Mark II, which was a flyer that was asymmetrical, it's still, you get it up in the air and you let off either the left or the right and just let it fly straight, and it would do that. It wouldn't tip to one side or the other. So that's good. That's good to know. We can get away with a little bit when it comes to balancing things. Overall, the biggest limitation of my builds right now is CPU. So we're going to focus our efforts on addressing that as best we can. It's really not that bad when you've got premium, because you get twice the experience towards, increasing your robo rank. or whatever that's called. I don't even remember anymore. Your level. I guess it is player level. Something level that increases your CPU. If we had 50 and 11, that would be fantastic, but for now I'd settle for 1400. We'd be able to do a lot of things with that. So we're just about done this gun mount. And all that time, all that yammering, another gun mount is done. And now we can kind of build things out. We can figure out where we can place extra blocks to absorb extra damage. Reorient the occasional prism to change the way things are connecting. So we just had one that was connecting on the top and on the left, and we just changed it around so that it's a little bit more robust. Throw a couple up underneath there. These ones here that are coming down are mostly just, again, to protect from splash damage, giving us a little bit of extra armor before the things we really want to keep start getting in the way, so to speak. Now we can start looking at finishing the protection around the sides of the hover blades. It's not so much it's not so important at this particular place on the bot, because the hover blades are basically protected from the armor on all the other sides. It's protected by the front armor, it's protected by the gun mounts on either side, and it'll be protected by the shared armor between the front and the rear hover blades. So it's not really that big of a deal, but still, just for the sake of not seeing things go wrong with your bot when it starts taking damage that you could have prevented if you hadn't just done what you thought was right the first time. You know, we'll take a little bit of time. We'll make a bit of a connection there. It's not a big deal. It doesn't take long. And then that'll be done. So the next episode, I'll let you know, there's not much more I can say about what we're doing here. We're just going to kind of finish off this little bit. We're going to take some blocks out of the way and see what we've got. The next episode might be a day or two in the making relative to when this one is uploaded, just because we're going to focus on getting some CPU so we can finish things off a little bit better. But we're just basically going to finish out the chassis towards the back end of the bot. We're going to reinforce the pilot seat a little bit better, do the last two legs and the last two hover blades, and then probably the last thing we'll do is the gun mounts on the back of the bot, and probably some detailing how that connects to the chassis. We aren't necessarily going to have it at a 90-degree angle the way it is now. So lots to do, lots of CPU that we need to do it. But it's all manageable, and then once it's all done, we'll be able to get some matches in this guy and see how it performs. In the meantime, if we are taking a little bit longer than ideal to get the CPU together, we'll just do some match footage with Pretty Hate Machine, or my other SMG hover that I made. Is just a little babby that scoots around and shoots things. It's not really worth doing a build for that one, but it's kind of a fun craft that we can mess around in. So if you want to be notified when I add those videos, as always, easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media always in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.